Today's guest is the most amazing Amy Andrews, local author living on the Capricorn coast. And I am so lucky to have heard Amy speak a couple of years ago now at a Regional Women's Network Central Queensland. That's a mouthful and a half. Regional Women's Network Central Queensland lunch event where I got to learn all about the amazing experience that you've had and the journey that you've had with writing and becoming an author, and your work, of course, before that as a nurse. And I've also been super lucky to have worked alongside you and learnt a lot from you with some small involvement at the Capricorn Coast Writers Festival a couple of years ago as well.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited that you're here. I'm very thankful for your time, and I'm looking forward to unpacking a little bit more about who is Amy Andrews.
Looking forward to it as well.
I love learning about people that I know well or not so well. And
Mm.
on this podcast, I'm learning so much more about them, and I feel very privileged. Yeah, I'm very thankful that you're here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Before we get stuck into the real questions, though, I would like to know if you could be an expert in absolutely anything at all, what would it be and why?
Okay, well, like a lot of things, because I'm one of those sort of, jack of all trades sort of thing, master at none. Quite, I think a lot of mothers are like that, particularly, right? You kind of do what you have to do, and then everything else kind of falls through the cracks. You don't really get to have a granular kind of look at anything. But I have become obsessed since moving to Yeppoon with sea glass. So I'm a huge glass
No.
now, but I don't know anything much about it other than it's pretty and I love it. So I would love to just be that, do that, be the like foremost world expert on sea glass and go around the world and like talk about it and collect it. And that would make me so happy. The beach is my happy place. And there's nothing more heart pounding and satisfying than picking up a beautiful piece of really tumbled green glass or white glass or occasionally blue glass. Don't get that very much here, but yeah, that would be me. It'd be sea glass.
Isn't it interesting? I find it interesting, the things that are out there in the world that we often forget about and take for granted that it's just there. And, hearing you say that, I'm like, oh, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And
I didn't. I'd never heard of it before. I mean, maybe I had it in some obscure way, but I don't remember of it like having any consciousness of there being sea glass. And I remember because my friend Neen, Neen, Dave,
mm,
she collected it. Like I saw a little jar, I think at her shop once, and I was like, "Oh, what's that?" She said, "It's sea glass." I'm like, "Oh, where do you get that from?" She's like, "The beach." I'm like, Yeppoon Beach, the beach. She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I've never seen sea glass. Never." She's like, "It's there." And so the next time I went walking, I found some and I started collecting it for her. And then I probably did that for about a year or 18 months. Then I found my first blue piece and I was like, okay, no, I'm collecting it for me now. But yeah, so I don't know how many years, all of my life, I've always loved shells. So I've always looked for shells. I've been attracted to shells anyway. But I could hand on heart say I'd never seen a bit of sea glass at all, unless it was like, a recently broken bottle at all until, I started looking in Yeppoon. But obviously I've walked past it all the time and not even realized.
and why is the blue not so common? Like, have you done much research into it or?
Oh, not, I've done a little bit of research into it. You can certainly get, different places in the world have different colors. Like, and certainly like in Yeppoon, we mostly have brown glass. And I get about 80% brown and I get 10% white, 10% green on most sort of little, forays I do. And that will vary around Australia. But I think it's a lot to do with like lots of blue, like, UK, US, sort of, I guess the old shipping trading routes where old bottle factories were, that sort of thing, because they often chuck their refuse into the sea, like, like we've done for centuries, you see as a rubbish bin. So it's got a lot to do with that. It's got a lot to do with what your beach is like as well. Some beaches I've been on just don't even really have any shells, let alone, any glass. So it's got to do with topography of like, tides and waves and tumbling, because they say that one, really tumbled piece of sea glass can be up to 100 years old. It could be 5 years or it could be 100 years. And to me, that's the most fascinating thing. Like, where did this come from? What's its provenance? How long has it been at sea for? It's just kind of, I don't know, they call them, apparently in the past they used to be called mermaid's tears, little tiny bits of colourful glass, which I love.
Yeah, wow.
Fascinated, obsessed. Anybody who knows me knows I'm obsessed with sea glass.
Also, you are an expert in an obscure
Well,
topic because I don't know any of this
I'm not
stuff.
an expert, but I would love to be expert level. I'd like to be on mastermind with my expert level being sea glass.
Oh, I love that. Getting stuck into you and your journey and, an author of, I don't even know the count, is it 60 plus books now?
90 or so.
90, okay, I had the 6 and the 9 around the
Yeah,
wrong way.
yeah, that's
Um,
right.
Over 90 books. Like, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you became an author and, to have so many books as well, like, and just thinking about, like, those key moments or people along the way that have helped shape, this adventure for you.
I wasn't one of those people that always wanted to be like a lot of my author friends. From the moment I could staple paper together, I knew that I wanted to be an author, and that was like never me. It never occurred to me that that was a job, which of
Mhm.
course was stupid because there were books. I was a huge, I loved books and always have. I was a big reader. So obviously there were people who wrote books, but it just was not within my realm of things that you do. It just didn't seem, I don't know, did never occur. Even though I was very good at English at school, I was very good at creative writing. I wrote very bad poetry in my teens. I have kind of always been a bit sort of leaning more towards that sort of area of creativity, but it never occurred to me. And then when we were living in the UK, back when we were first married, we were having our first winter in the UK. And I'm a Central Queensland girl, right? So we don't get winters like late winters. We had just moved into this new house, and we had a week where the temperatures didn't get above zero, and like the cobwebs in our house were frozen. Like I'd never seen a frozen cobweb other than in like a National Geographic picture in my life. And I was temporarily out of work. We just moved to a different place, and I had some CVs out at local hospitals. And I was like, what can I do that does not involve me getting off my electric blanket till I get a job? So I think I was out of work for like 6 weeks. And I thought, I'll write that book that's in my head. And then I was like, wait, I've got a book in my head. It kind of was that weird thing that hadn't ever really articulated to myself. And I just wrote, I wrote it in 10 days, like 50,000 words, 10 days, longhand. This was back in the day before anybody had personal computers at home, back before there was
Wow.
an internet, or before internet was actually, in commercially available in people's homes.
Mhm.
And it was then that I realized that actually I had always had stories in my head. I just didn't really recognize them as that. I was one of those kids that teachers always said stuff like, after talk too much, said has an active imagination. And I think I look back now and I go, there were plots. I always had plots in my head. I just didn't know how to articulate that.
Mhm.
I don't know about my earlier influences. My mother has obviously been a huge influence on my life, as lots of mothers are. She was amazing and fantastic. She was actually writing a book when I was growing up. We lived in Emerald for 6 years. Where I did most of my primary school years in Emerald. And to this old typewriter, and she'd be like bashing away on it. Some four little kids and not a lot of time. And she was very busy, as in she's a very active community member. So it never really sort of, came to much fruition. But I suppose subliminally, that was possibly always there in the back of my head that, I could do that. Yeah. And then I sent that book off after I was living in the UK. So I had written a Mills and Boon. I'd sent it off to Mills and Boon, like posted it physically, like this thick, posted it. 9 months later, I got a rejection. It was a
Mm.
very standard form rejection. And I always said that was the moment that I became a writer, because that just made me bloody minded. I was like, okay, all right, well, I'll show you. I will write a book and you'll publish it if it kills me. It came then about learning. Okay, obviously I don't know what I'm doing. I thought this was gonna, be snapped up and I'll make $1 million and someone will make a movie out of it and all those kind of things you first think. Because, I'd read a lot of books and I kind of knew kind of just was intuitive. The format was intuitive. But when I got home, I was like, okay. And I joined the Writer Centre and I joined Romance Writers of Australia and I did I went to workshops and I read how-to books and I just did this what I call my apprenticeship, which took 12 years before I got published. I really was, and I'm honestly, I was working as a nurse and I had, two children in that time. So I wasn't very, I had other things to do other than just churn out books, 4 or 5 times a year to try and get them published. So I wasn't very productive in that 12 years, but I was still writing and sending off and getting rejections. So a few. So yeah, it was a bit of a long, convoluted process, but got
Mm.
there in the end.
Yes, and isn't it funny, sometimes it comes to mind when people, they might label someone, and this has not happened to you, of course, but they'll say, "She's an overnight success." Well,
Mm.
actually, it took 12 years to become an overnight success. And that's
exactly.
all of the detail that people don't see behind the scenes.
Exactly. I think it was book 60, maybe. I don't know. Don't quote me, I have no idea really. Before I hit the USA Today bestseller list, for example, in the US.
Wow.
You know, as you know, in any kind of career, you have all these little milestones that you kind of always want to hit, but you have to work towards, and maybe you never will.
Mm.
That was, yeah. It, again, like, oh, you've hit the USA Today bestseller list. I'm like, yeah, after 60 books, I did.
That's amazing,
Mm.
and it's such a great example of, hard work, determination, consistency, 12 years of rejections, you didn't let it stop you, you just kept churning out books. Have you published any of those books that were rejected initially? Like, have you gone back and sort of rewritten them or tweaked them and resubmitted?
I know. So my first book that I wrote, I still have it here longhand. Will never see the light of day ever. I actually got it out not that long, oh, quite a few years ago, I suppose now. But I thought, well, it's a full book. It can't be that bad, right? Like I could,
Mm,
probably use it. And then I read it and I was like, no, I can't use this. And then, so my first two books were then published. So my first book was published, and then the next two were books that had been rejected, that had been reworked. So yes, in a word. But only really
yeah,
got one. Oh, I suppose I got a book that I wrote with my sister that's not kind of gone anywhere, not really done anything with it. But yeah, I've really only got the one that's stayed in a drawer and
mhm.
never to see the light of day. Yes.
Maybe on the Capricorn Coast, they could have, like, an arts museum that's separate to the art gallery or anything else.
I went to the British Museum, and one of the exhibits, and I'm gonna get the wrong band member, but it was a Beatles band member. And it had, like, one of the glass display cases, and it had like an old school exercise book, and in pencil was written, I think it was "Love Me Do," or the lyrics in one of those, like, "I want to hold your hand," or something like that, like just written down
Yeah.
as like a poem. And the teacher had written 3 out of 10, see me on the bottom. So,
Yeah,
never
well,
give up, right?
yeah, like
Don't take rejection or criticism. Just keep plugging away.
yeah, that's it. So, going from being a nurse and
Yes.
working as a nurse, raising children and writing at the same time and doing your 12-year apprenticeship, what was that, the ins like, when you were doing all of that, did you think, "One day I'm going to be a well-known famous writer and I can quit my day job and I'll just be able to write forever." Like, what did that journey look like for you? Or what inspired you the day that you said, "Okay, I can quit being a nurse now. I'm absolutely 100% all in on an author."
Interestingly, I didn't quit being a nurse. I just worked full time and worked in nurse part time I only gave up nursing 10 years ago. And I've been doing writing. I've been a published author for 20 years. So 20 years, 20 years this year, my debut came out. So I forgotten the beginning of the question now. I'm sorry.
What's your journey from transitioning from being a nurse into being a full-time author? What did that look like?
Yeah. So I have not. I nursed all that time. I loved being a nurse. I absolutely loved it. And if the hospital that I was working in hadn't shut down, and I was working in the Royal Children's Hospital in Brisbane, and that shut down, and they made the big new Queensland Children's Hospital. And probably if that hadn't shut down, I would probably still be working there. But there was a choice to be made. Do you want to go over to the new hospital, or go elsewhere? And I was like, I've been at the Royal Children's Hospital for 21 years. I was like, oh, I don't know, do I want to get on a new place? And, you know, just that whole, we don't do it like that. With the whole kind of settling them new hospital, or do I want to, because I had another job. I was a writer. I was, making as much money for my writing as was for my nursing. Like, do I want to is this the universe's way of saying you get to just do one thing now? And so in the end, I decided not to go back, and just to really concentrate on, obviously I was going to take my income, because I was essentially halving my income. This is what you got to do now. So I spent a couple of years saying yes to everything after that, which was crazy, because I think I had 8 books that one year. And I would not recommend that. But
Mhm.
I was like, I don't want to go backwards here. I need to be earning an income as well. So, that was sort of, and it's interesting. It's been quite, for a long time, my kind of income trajectory just kept going up and up. Like, it would plateau, but it never sort of ever went backwards. But then I had a few years there, sort of pre-pandemic, where it kind of went back a few years. So it's a very up and down kind of a,
Mhm.
um, career, I suppose. You have your
Mm.
good years and you have your bad years. So, but I wanted to, like, I wanted when I was, what made me determine when I was starting out that, okay, I don't think I thought much past, okay, I'll show you, I'm going to write a book you're going to publish, right? I don't. So I knew I wanted to be an author, but I didn't really know or understand what that meant. I didn't really, understand the hard stuff about it, but also what kind of a world it would open up for me, like to be in this kind of author community and bookish community is really amazing. All those things I didn't really think about. It was just this goal that I was so focused on. And I think that's the thing. Oftentimes when you work towards a goal and you achieve that goal and you're like, so I'm like, okay, I got a phone call from London publishing my book. I did it. I climbed this huge mountain, took me 12 years. I got to the top, go me. And then you get to the top of that mountain and you go through the door that says published author and you think, woo. And then you see there's another mountain to climb. And that's like
Yeah.
the second book, right? There's always this, it's not, and I think that's a mistake a lot of people do, right? When they sort of set a goal and achieve it, it's always, well, you know, what's next? So I
Mm.
hadn't really thought much about that beyond, but I knew that I wanted to keep writing. I knew most authors that, because I was published initially by Mills and Boon, we usually put out 4 books a year. So I was still working part time and I had little kids. It was just then about just writing the next book and the next book and the next book. And 20 years later, you know,
Mm.
I'm kind of honing in on my 100th book probably the next few years. So, yeah.
Yes, that is such an incredible achievement, 90 books. I can't
Mm,
even imagine it. That's amazing.
yeah. It is a lot of books.
Yes. So thinking about living on the Capricorn Coast, how do you think that's inspired your journey? So when you finished working at the Brisbane Children's Hospital and
Mm.
made the change or the switch and, how's that changed now? And obviously you've done work with the Capricorn Coast Writers Festival. You founded that, you got it up and running. You did that for a few iterations of that festival before handing it on to the next, group of people. What does that look and feel like for you? Like, what does Yeppoon or the Capricorn Coast mean to you, and how's it influenced your journey?
Well, it's interesting because I've only lived in Ukraine for 7 years. But I was born in Rockhampton and I was pretty much raised in Rockhampton. So I'm pretty much a seeker. Lived in Emerald. My family lived in Cloncurry for a couple of years when I was first born and then lived in Rockhampton. Then I did my primary school years in Emerald and then my high school years in Rocky and I trained at Rocky Base Hospital. I guess Yeppoon's only a new thing to me. And I
Mm.
mean, I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. I just want to say, because I know that how much you focus on Rocky in the podcast, which I love because I am a Rocky girl. I was sort of born and raised here. I did my nursing training here. I met the person who's still my best friend here. I fell in love with my husband here. It's just
Mm.
it's the place where my parents grew up. It's where all my cousins live. It's where my father still lives. It's where my husband's family still lives. It's just kind of that thing that is just always home to me. I know when we lived in Brisbane, because we lived in Brisbane for 26 years, and we drove into Rocky because we would probably come and visit twice a year. I would always play, Cold Chisel's Flame Trees because I love Cold Chisel and my favourite song's always been Kaysan. But the older I got and the more every time I sort of would drive into Rockhampton, the words from Flame Trees would kind of come back to me. So I always made sure I put it on and we'd play it as we came into Rockhampton because it's such a nostalgic song about, going home, isn't it? So really, really reminded me, of that. So to me, Rocky is about home and it's about family. Even when I lived on the other side of the world, it was like people say, where do you come? People say to me, where do you come from? I say Rockhampton, like not Australia, right? Yeppoon's been a more recent iteration for me. My husband grew up here. He was born in Sydney originally, but I think they moved here when he was about 5. So he's sort of been in the Yeppoon area longer than I have. And I've always wanted to live with water. That's always been my pipe dream. Many years we lived with mountain views. My husband's from a farming background, so he wanted that. And I was like, when the kids left home, I was like, well, I want to live by the water. So whether it's a river or a lake or the ocean,
Mm.
whatever, I want to do it. And we were home. I did my first event in Yeppoon at Chapter, coffee shop, bookshop there
Yes.
that's run by Neen Davies' daughter, Sarah. And when we're here for the weekend, I was with my bestie. We're in Emu Park having brunch the next day and was just flicking through. This is like 2000 and, 2006 17, maybe beginning of. Um, we were flicking through the real estate paper as you do, and I was like, "Oh my god, houses are so cheap here." Literally,
When you've come from Brisbane, yes.
3 blocks back from the beach, 4-bedroom, brick and tile, three or $400,000. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, maybe we could do this." And that, like I said, our kids had left home, and I can work from wherever I wanted to work. My husband was slightly more reluctant because he has had a fairly established business, and he loved his mountain view. But we kind of saw a house there that we really loved. It was way too expensive, but he sort of said, I could move for something like this. Because I've been saying for years, don't get too comfortable here because I want to move one day to the beach. And he was always very resistant. The kids were very resistant. And when we saw that, we just went that day and saw this house, just the outside, pipe dream was like millions of dollars. We couldn't afford it. But, he was like, "Oh, I could move for something like this." And I was like, "Oh, you blinked, I got you." And so actually then I had a campaign of slowly and inexorably moving him, moving him, moving him, moving him, until, yeah, we ended up moving here at the beginning of 2018. He's one of the best things we've ever done in our lives. Not just because we have an amazing view from our house. I get to sit every morning in front of my deck and my cup of tea and look at the ocean, which I find, visually, amazing, but also I love walking along the beach, and that's, I find that actually quite inspirational as far as creativity goes as well. But also we have elderly parents now. My mother died 15 years ago, so my father's by himself. He's got Alzheimer's now. My husband's father died a few years ago. So we got to spend that kind of time, with them that we wouldn't have. He got to spend that time with his father that he wouldn't probably have done had we still been in Brisbane. So it's that kind of reconnection with family as well. And then, yes, we've been here for 2 weeks, and it was actually Neen Davies' idea for the Writers' Festival. I would say she was the founder. I was on the original committee though. I was talking to her, and she's like, I feel like we should have a festival, like a writers' festival or something. I really want to get that started. I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll help you do that."
Mm.
And so we formed a committee there that day, and I went home to my husband and said, "Oh, I've joined a committee." And he's like, "Of course you've joined a committee. We came from Brisbane to get away from all the committees and stuff you're on, and now you're on another committee." But as my mum, who said lots of wise things, was a great believer that in any small town, life is what you make it. So she
Mhm.
always said, "You're in a small town, you can whinge and moan and complain that nobody knows you or likes you, or you've got nothing to do, or you can get out, you can join things, you can, you can join a sports club, you can join a service club, you can do tuck shop, you can do PNC, you can do, all of those kind of things." I pretty much grew up with parents who, did, amazing service things wherever they were. So it was
Mm.
only second nature to me to go, "Sure, I'll do that. I'll give you a hand." And it's been wonderful to see this Capricorn Coast Writers Festival, and to know that for 3 years I was so 6 years, so it's every 2 years. So for three of those committees to be part of that was just, a lot of work, but these things are right. So it's just been amazing to be able to bring that kind of event with that sort of caliber of, authors to Yeppoon. It's been
Mm.
amazing.
It is an absolutely amazing festival.
Mm.
Yes, and very, very well done to Neen for creating that and bringing it to life, and then to everyone who served on those committees and made it happen.
Yeah, yeah, she's a real go-getter.
And for anyone who's listening, it happens every 2 years. Uh,
You know,
we've just had it in 2025, so it'll happen again in 2027.
yes, and I think this is the thing we've struggled with most, is how to let people know it's out there. I mean, we can only do so much. I know after every festival, people say, "Oh, I didn't know it was on," and I will point to the flags down the centre of Yeppoon Street,
Yeah,
saying, "See all those flags up there? That's the
yeah.
Capricorn Coast Writers Festival." So it's really, yeah, it's difficult, but it's every 2 years. So keep an eye out for it. Keep an eye out if that's the kind of thing that you like. And also, I think the problem is, and that's why we this last time, not this time, but the time before, we actually changed to Stories by the Sea, Capricorn
Mm,
Coast Writers Festival, because a lot of people think, "Oh, Writers Festival, I'm not a writer, that's not for me." But that's not the way Writers Festivals work. If you go to Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, most of the people attending that aren't writers, they're readers. There are
mm,
people who love books and are interested in books and want to hear authors talk about books and how they do what they do. So that's why we want to try to change it to be people were aware that it's not about you don't have to be a writer to go. In fact, it's a festival for you as a reader to come along
Mm.
to. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. Love it. Such a great festival. So, thinking about everything that you've experienced as an author or as a nurse, even, we have those really big moments, whether they're challenges, whether they're triumphs, whether they're mediocre. Have you got any one particular thing that stands out as the most impactful or the most meaningful lesson that you've obtained over your journey?
I feel that to me, that original rejection is probably the most meaningful
Mm,
in as far as it made me determined and shaped me into the person who's like, well, this is what I'm going to do. So that certainly had an impact because, if I'd sort of not heard back from them even, I would have not necessarily even have, gone down that path. So that
mm,
certainly had the most impact. I went through a very bad period of burnout. Through the pandemic, like a lot of creatives did. I feel that that's really reborn me and reshaped me as an author as well, because it's quite difficult to write now. I mean, it's never easy, but it's sometimes hard to really find kind of the joy in that. And I've had to learn that I can actually write and feel not great about it, but actually that it's still good work
mm,
because I feel like you think if you're not feeling good about something, then you must not be doing a great job at it. And I think that can be true, but also
mm,
doesn't have to be true either. That you can almost sort of separate your brain space from your productivity
mm,
in a way. So that's been a very interesting lesson because otherwise I think I might have, it was just, I had a period of time where I was like, "Well, this is, a lot of things happened all at once and it had been coming for a while and I'd been ignoring it, which is always the last thing you should do about burnout. So don't do that, boys and girls. Don't
mm,
ignore it." And that became my biggest challenge because I had a book due. Um, and I didn't want to be late with it again. And I had to just go, okay, don't worry about it. Just write one word at a time. People often talk about writer's block. And even though I've been through burnout, I didn't have writer's block. Like I could write. I just didn't really want to. I
mm,
found it really hard to actually and I would put off going to the computer all day if I could. When I sat down, I could actually physically write. But I feel like sometimes it's easy to think what you're doing isn't perfect, but actually doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done because you can actually, especially with writing,
mm.
you can fix a bad page. You just can't fix a blank page, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. And I remember when you spoke at and this has helped me to this day, and, I don't write fiction, of course, it's not my jam, but I do write a lot of nonfiction.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yet, but I do obviously have deadlines that I have to hit as well, particularly with columns and blogs and newsletters. And sometimes I don't call it writer's block either, but I'm like, I've got nothing. I've got nothing valuable to add to this world right now. But then I remember when you spoke at the lunch where I first met you and you said, some days are hard. Like being a writer is not easy. Same with anyone in the creative field, being an actor, being a painter, anything. It's
Mm.
not easy. It's not this cruisy, free hippie lifestyle. And you said sometimes you just have to sit there and write one word, just write one word. And I have written many columns by writing one word at a time, just one single word. And I even wrote a column about writing one word to write a column. It's
I read that column. Yes.
it's a very valuable lesson that you've left with me for all of these years, and it's helped me as a writer as well.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I do. I always say that about people ask about writer's block. I'm like, just write one word. If you're a writer, you can't not just write one word.
Mhm,
No writer ever just writes one word because it'll
mhm,
be followed by another word, and then that'll be followed by another word, and it might not be fast, but that's kind of you kind of get
mm.
into the rhythm of it then, and then sort of before you know it, you're actually into it.
Yes, and sometimes writing a piece is like pulling hen's teeth. It's so hard. But as you just said, done is better than perfect because you cannot fix a blank page, but you can fix, an average piece of writing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with it is the thing with writing that a lot of things, in a lot of cases, it's probably you probably can't be a surgeon and just do all that's an average job, right? There are some things that you can't. You have to be perfect at every time. But writing, I guess, any creative art that has a lot of wiggle room, I suppose, for want of a better word, that you can just just get it down. People off because I often do manuscript assessments, and people spend so much. Well, off a lot of new writers will spend time rewriting the same chapter or the same page or even the same book over and over and over. And it's like at some point, that's great, but it's never going to be published if you don't finish it.
Mhm.
So don't worry too much about the quality of what you're writing, particularly if you know that's a trigger for you that you're just going to continually polish, 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 polish. Just
Mm.
write the whole thing first and then worry about polishing it. Now, some people can't do that because that's just not their process. But a lot of people do that initially just because they think that's what you're supposed to do, rather
Mm.
than just getting it all down and doing it. And that's another great thing that actually came out of my burnout was I couldn't write creatively, but I could do things like I could do manuscript assessments because
Mm.
that's one thing I'm really good at. I can look at writing and go, oh, okay, I know how I can help you here. I know this is great. You could work on that. I'm really quite good at that. And three other author friends of mine formed a little business during COVID called How to Write Academy, and we've got a couple online courses now, one to do with
Oh.
writing romance, one to do with self-publishing. That people can do to help them in that process. So, if you are interested in writing a romance novel, or if you're interested in self-publishing any of your work, then we have these courses that you can do online. And it's just so that was amazing because that I was still writing. We wrote all our content and all our modules are written by us. So I was able
Mm.
to write that easy peasy. That was easy for me to do. It was hard for me to write creatively, but it was really easy for me to write in this kind of different way. And so the How to Write Academy has just been, this amazing kind of like little sort of sidearm to my business, I suppose. Amy Andrews is a business. I
Mhm.
write books. And all good businesses at some stage of their life usually have to diversify, right? So I love that I have this now, this with these three other authors who are all amazing, incredible authors with amazing, incredible backgrounds and stories and bodies of work. And we get to be this little team where we get to be able to teach, new writers or people who are looking to maybe change genres or whatever, or someone looking for a refresh who haven't written for years. It's just been a really incredible, journey to have that come out of burnout. If I've been sort of happily, creatively chugging along, I might not even been desperately looking around for something else I could do that involved writing, that didn't involve creative writing.
Yes. Yeah, no, that is such a great story and an amazing legacy, and absolutely agree. Businesses, over time, they need to adjust and shift with you as you grow and evolve and change, and you want it to still be a business that serves you in addition to serving, the broader population. But that's amazing. So thank you for putting all of your collective brains together to create such an amazing resource that people can go to when they want to learn more.
Yeah, yeah. It's well, just been like I said, it was a bit of a godsend at the time. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. So my last question for the day
Mhm.
is it's a bit of a two-part question. So what keeps driving you today? So obviously you've been through a heck of a lot in your lifetime. You've got a lot of life experience, from the traditional employment to doing both to just being a writer to now creating your own academy or business. What keeps you going every day? And then second part to that question is what advice would you give to the next generation of whether that be writers or just anyone in general, young people, people from the Rocky or Capricorn Coast area? Like, what advice would you give them to make the most out of the life that they're here to live?
Yes, I would say my best advice is if you want to write, if you want to be a writer, read. I know it sounds simple and cliched, but it's the absolute read everything. Read in the genre you want to write and read out of that genre. The most important thing that will inform your own writing is you will learn from reading other people's books. And I'm not talking about plagiarism. I'm talking about you absorb the process and the formats, and it just becomes this sort of part of your existence. By osmosis, you kind of know how to write. You're ahead of the eight ball to start with because you kind of
Mm.
know what you do before you're starting. It's very important, and reading increases things like vocabulary and sentence structure, and it gives you all that sort of stuff. You don't even realize that you're doing when you're reading. You're not reading a book for that, right? But you're absorbing all that. So first and foremost, read. And today there are so many tools around if you want to be a writer that there were when I first started out in 1992 when I wrote my first book. There was no such thing as Amazon or self-publishing or anything, that sort of thing. that
Mm.
there is now. So there's an incredible amount of stuff out there for you to at your kind of disposal to be able to learn or to different routes to take. And I would also say, of course, is not to give up. Don't give up. Don't take no for an answer. If you're trying to get traditionally published, for example, if you're trying to get an agent, for example, just keep going. Just start again. Write something new. Don't go back and work on the same thing again. Write something new because hopefully you've learned from that previous thing, and you can, your next thing will. It's about writing and not getting any better. It's not, you're not gonna get anywhere if you don't improve.
Mm.
We all learn every day in life, right? So I'm writing better than I was when I wrote my first. Certainly when I wrote my first book, that's in a drawer that will never come out from my debut book 20 years ago, right? We always improve. So don't give up, keep going, get better, find help. There's plenty of it online. And I've forgotten the first part of the question now.
No, that's okay. What keeps you going? Like you're full-time author, writer, academy facilitator.
Mm.
What keeps you going every day? What keeps driving you forward?
Well, because I don't want to do anything else. I find writing really hard, these days, but I also don't want to do anything else. And I know that as hard as it is to get to the end of a book, I know that once I've finished that book, it is the best feeling in the world. The best. Like it might have been 2 months of, word by word, like being surgically extracted from me hard, but it's an amazing feeling at the end. And that's what keeps me going. It's like that bit at the end. It's like, I've written a book and no one can take that from you, right? Even if it's not published, you write a book and you get all the way to the end. I remember the first book that I wrote, I was like, oh my God, I just wrote a book. It's the most incredible feeling. It doesn't matter in that point, in that moment of the end, when you've written the end, it doesn't matter what you're going to do with it or where it's going to go. It's just that moment that you've done this incredible thing, because not everybody can do that. Lots of people think they can write a book, but
Mm.
they never do. And
Mhm.
so if you can do it and get right to the end, that's amazing. So I do it for that. I do it for the emails you receive from people who say, I read your book when I was sitting by my mother's bedside when she was dying. And, it was such a comfort. I really like how you did this new book, or, can we please have so and so's book from this one that I've just read, because, I just love the story. So I love it for that. Want to keep doing it because I love that I can go into the library and I can go along to A's and I can I can pull my book off the shelf. Kid who grew up with a library card. That's the most amazing thing. I still get a thrill every single time. Yes, it's thrilling to go into a bookshop and see it, but to see it on a library shelf, that's really amazing as well. So I do it for all those things, and because I don't want to do anything else. I had a crazy moment during the pandemic and I thought maybe I should go back to nursing. And then I thought, what are you, crazy? Why would you go back to nursing in the middle of a pandemic? That's how burnout I was. I was thinking I could go back to nursing in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah, that's saying something.
I know. Yeah, yeah. But I was like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to do anything else. I love being an author. I love being a nurse, but I really love being an author as well. I'm going to go to Tasmania next week for the Romance Writers of Australia conference. I'm giving a workshop. I've just finished doing a manuscript assessment through the How to Write Academy. I love all that kind of thing. This time last year, I was in Toronto at Harlequin's 75th wedding, 75th anniversary. So when we go to the conference, there'll be a party for the HarperCollins authors that I get to go to. I love all of those things. So I want to keep doing that. I think it's amazing and incredible. You get to be with these amazing, incredible, artistic people who are always, there's always lively, amazing conversations, and you can do it anywhere. I'm going to the UK for 6 weeks after I get back from Tasmania, and I have my laptop. I can travel. I can take my. I mean, that's also a curse. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I can literally up sticks and do it anywhere.
No, that's so great. Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I'm super appreciative of your time and your continuous
Yeah.
sharing and knowledge passing on and tips and tricks. And I just learn so much every time we catch up. And yeah, I'm very, very thankful that you are so generous with your time this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for taking your time to chat to me.
It's been my pleasure.